Good day. The recent passing away of Winnie Madikizela-Mandela reminds us that for many decades she was part of the South African narrative. For many millions of people here and abroad, she was a hero, a heroine. She was part and parcel of the struggle. For others, they might focus on the less palatable parts of her lifetimes. But leaving aside emotion, at least two important questions arise. What legacy does she leave behind? And secondly, and related, what messages can we use going forward in terms of leadership in this country, both at a national level, corporate level, in fact at a societal level? And to answer these tricky questions, I'm pleased to welcome Professor Piet Naudé. Piet is the director of the business school, has been for a number of years, has a very interesting and rich narrative in his own right, formerly vice rector at Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University. Piet is a theologian by profession and a specialist in the business of ethics and perhaps the ethics of business.
Yes, absolutely.
So Piet, Winnie Mandela, her passing, the legacy leaves behind?
Well, first one has to say that she is part and parcel of the liberation struggle in the country, because she was married to our former president, Nelson Mandela. She, I think, stands out from among the crowd. There are many women that were involved in the struggle, but Winnie Mandela stands out as one of exceptional importance. And I think the legacy that she leaves is a leader who believed in certain principles, and what is extremely important is under severe pressure and provocation, she was able to stay true to the kind of principles that she stood for. What was done to her by the government of that time and the security police, that is public knowledge. The fact that her family was separated, it was a terrible, terrible personal struggle that she went through, but that personal struggle was always embedded in the values of the bigger struggle, that all people are in fact equal. We should have universal suffrage in our country. There should be freedom of movement for people. I think Winnie symbolizes the best of the struggle that we had in South Africa. But I think we can also learn that nobody is perfect. We also know that there are parts of a legacy that are less attractive, and I am always hesitant as an academic to look at great leaders as truly perfect icons. Nobody is perfect, and her case illustrates again that we're human, that we can make errors of judgment, that we can associate with people that might seem to support our cause, but in the end undermine that cause. So I think if we keep the ambiguity, André, in the air, that is where the message lies. Not in glorifying or vilifying, but in having a balanced view of a solid contribution, tremendous personal sacrifices that she made. And I think we should keep the ambiguity, because that is the way struggles work.
Is she part of a dying generation with a certain moral fiber within the ANC?
That is a tough question. Let me rather say she is, purely from an historical perspective, the generation that were born in the 1918 to roughly about 1940. They will start die out now. So we will see people in their late 80s, early 90s. So clearly that specific generation of leaders of the early struggle, ANC was founded in 1912, say the 30 years thereafter, they are leaving us, and they have shown tremendous moral courage. We have seen under the Zuma regime a tremendous failure in the moral fiber of the ANC, not necessarily all individuals, because as you know, there were also those from the older generation who stood up against state capture and undermining. But what we should ask is whether there's a new generation of younger people who are modern, who understand we live in an industrialized society, we live in a globalized world, whether that new generation can come forward, I think it's early to say. There are good signs, but again, there's also ambiguous signs. We have ministers of the younger generation that the courts have found to have lied under oath. Now, that doesn't tell us a good story.
So, in conclusion, can we learn as leaders in South Africa, in the South Africa going forward, can we learn from the life and times of Winnie Mandela?
I think we can. I think what is important is that leaders in this country commit themselves to the values that are so well formulated in the preamble to our Constitution. The values of reconciliation, of human dignity, of equality. Those values are important, but values, André, means nothing unless they are acted upon. Values are only visible or embodied once they act. So the best way to honor this legacy is to subscribe to the values, to proclaim those values. That's step one. But step two is to actually live according to those values. Because business in this country will not be sustainable in the longer term unless the social capital required for business is present in the same way that the financial capital or the natural capital is available. And we will not build social capital in this country unless it's built around values. Otherwise, we're going to run identity politics, racial politics, the stuff that they actually want to get away from. And really, there's a shared South Africanism based on those values. That, if we can take that into the future, I think we're in for a good time.
Good. Thank you very much. I think not only a very good objective overview of the life and times of Winnie Mandela, but also scope for a future discussion on social capital in the country and the importance thereof.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Piet.
Thank you.